Hello everyone, this is Sunil and I wish everyone having a good time. In today's demo class we will talk about SharePoint retention policy, at the same time preservation hold, and we will do a case study which is going to cover the SharePoint retention policy and also preservation hold. So let's understand the scenario first so that it will make our understanding much better in order to mitigate the issue. So let's imagine there is a user which has utilized approximately 200 gigabyte of data in OneDrive. However, the OneDrive reports that 250 gigabyte of storage has been utilized while we checked in the OneDrive online. So as an admin, he or user even he emptied his recycle bin, also secondary recycle bin in OneDrive online, but still that didn't make any difference, and it still shows 950 gigabyte storage being used in OneDrive online. So this is what we are going to discuss, why there is a difference in the OneDrive data. While we try to sync from online to desktop, it's 200 gigabyte. However, when we check in OneDrive online, it shows 250 gigabyte. So we will also share some screenshot. I have that. So that will make our understanding more easy. Then at the last, we'll try to view and explore it in the lab so that we will have better understanding in the real time how it looks and how it works and how can we mitigate the same. So let's fundamentally understand the SharePoint retention policy and what could be a cause of it, that it shows big difference in the OneDrive data and we are not sure where is that data going. So there can be three possibilities. First, the user OneDrive data included under a retention policy, or it could be e-discovery hold, or it could be data loss prevention policy. We will navigate to all these three options one by one. If any of those policy included a OneDrive URL or user OneDrive data, then we can exclude it, or if required, we can delete that policy. Depends, are we using that policy or not? Is it required or not? So we have an option even also to exclude the user from the policy rather than deleting the whole policy or disabling it if it being applied to the whole tenant. Let's understand by the screenshot first. So a user logged into his OneDrive online, and when he tried to sync his OneDrive data from online to the desktop, it shows like 199 or like approximately 200 gigabyte uh, space that is being used by the OneDrive. But at the same time, while we checked in the OneDrive online, it shows like 951 gigabyte storage being used, like approx 92%. So 8% remaining. So it definitely a concern, and as an admin and user, the time will come when user will occupy or will utilize all the data, and then he would not be able to save uh, any data in his OneDrive, and he is not aware where exactly this data going. So, and as an admin, we have the privilege or access to all the admin centers and access to investigate and to mitigate this. And this is what we are going to perform. So, the first, like as I said, that there are three scenarios. For one of them is retention policy. Most probably, in this situation, the user OneDrive or user included in the retention policy of SharePoint, and due to which it create a preservation whole library, and then even user delete their data, it still keep a copy of that from accidental deletion or willful under preservation hold, and that keep increase the space, and even user is not aware about the same. And this is basically done for a legal purpose, or a person who is working in an organization where his data is important for the future perspective. So how could we access or to view if the user data is really in preservation hold? So this is just an example on the right hand side. when we go to log into user account, or admin can even access his OneDrive, we have to, from the part of where it says domain.com, we have to put a forward slash and type in one word preservation hold library. And that's going to pull up the data, whatever is in preservation hold. And from there we can remove it. But that's not easy to remove, because problem here is that we are not able to delete. Even if you try to delete, it will throw you an error. Second way to check is this. When user log into their OneDrive, we could go to top right settings, like that looks like a gear icon. Then more settings, OneDrive settings, sorry, and then more settings, and then storage metrics. Once we do this, you will have a screen which look like this. And here, the second option, we could see clearly preservation whole library, total size 2.3 gigabyte. So this particular user data has been hold under preservation, and that is 2.3. So this is how, if a user data is not on preservation or is OneDrive, then it will not show you this. So this apply only to those users whose OneDrive included in the retention hold, and due to which it shows that. So we already have little understanding, but if we talk about what is a preservation hold? So the preservation hold ensures that there is no loss of data through accidental or willful deletion or editing of items under a preservation hold. A preservation hold preserves a custodian Microsoft 365 data, like an Exchange mailbox, OneDrive files, SharePoint, and it can also be a Teams. Depends to our need. We have an option to select. So now, as I discussed earlier, we have three places from where we can validate, we can check if user data is in any kind of a hold. The first is retention policy. That is what we can access from Compliance Center, policies, data retention. Now, we can check if there is a retention policy for the OneDrive. We can edit it, and we can check if user listed. If it is, then we can exclude the user. And that is what I will show you later in the lab, like how it looks and how can we exclude a user. But that will take up to 24 hours after that, so that the user data from the preservation hold can be removed. Second is e-discovery. That is, again, we can navigate from Compliance Center portal, then e-discovery and standard, and the premium is for premium license or E5, that the free premium. Otherwise, standard you will have for other licenses also available. We can check if there is any hold, and under the hold, if user included part of it. If he is, then we can exclude him. Or we don't have an open option to exclude. Rather, we have to close the case first, and then we have to delete the hold. That is how it works. Then we can also check the data loss prevention policy from the same compliance portal, policies, data, and data loss prevention policy. If you use a part of any data loss prevention policy, which keep increasing the space of his OneDrive, or not letting to delete any data or file or folder from OneDrive preservation. The next scenario, after following all these three options, three policies, and navigated and deleted the user policies where it was part of, or we excluded, we waited for 24 hours, still we are not able to delete files from preservation hold. Then there is one more option, that is we could access, or we could go to this URL, aka.ms/pillar invalid retention. And in order to log into this URL, we would require global admin access, because it run a diagnostic and it automatically find out if any retention policy being applied for that user OneDrive. So it required the user OneDrive URL with the preservation hold, and it looked like the user personal, the way we access preservation hold. Simply, if I'll say, we have to put that URL, and then it will diagnose. And the next screen, if there is any preservation, any hold uh, retention policy applied to that user OneDrive, it will show us, and it will look like this. The site is has invalid retention policy applied to it. If you would like to remove, we can remove it, and then we have to make a check mark on an I acknowledge, then update. That's done from your end. On the next screen, it will show you success. Removal of the invalid retention policy on the site has completed. Now this is done. Now wait for, because this is not something I will say immediately will be replicated and you would be allowed to remove the file, because it can take up to 24 hours to sync or to get the changes applied. Now this part is done from our end. I think this is what we have to look into. And in such scenario where we are unable to delete files of preservation hold, and there is a difference in the desktop OneDrive to the OneDrive of online where we check. So let's discuss this in a lab and to understand the same. So now first I will talk about the 3 policies that we discussed. So first I go to the Compliance Center, then policies. Under policies, under data, I have data loss prevention and the retention. So first I'll check the retention. If a user is part of any retention policy, that not even letting us to delete the file or keep increasing the size of user OneDrive. So like I have created already a policy earlier, OneDrive retention policy, which is familiar to me. That depends to the admin who created the policy, how it looks. So if I edit this policy, then I could check, is it applied to whole tenant, to all users, or specific users, or if I have options. So I had applied to these 2 users. Okay, but because you get a choice, either you can apply to the whole tenant or to a specific users. So these are the 2 users I had applied, and these are their OneDrive URL. So for example, there are 2 users. You see the name Cathy. One is Scott. Now, even if user delete the file from their OneDrive, that does not mean it will delete permanently from the OneDrive, because that data will still be on hold in the preservation library. So if we have to, like right now, I cannot exclude because I have added only 2 users. Let's take an example, and if I create a new policy, then I could show you the same. So, but in this case, if you're looking, because Cathy, let's take an example, is the user whose data keep increasing, and we don't know what to do and what is causing it. So in that scenario, if user is Cathy, like Cathy or Scott, one of them, then we can simply go here and add it, and we can just make a check mark on this one. Gary is not there anymore. We can click done, next, 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 and save. This is what we have excluded, because right now only 2 users were part of it. So this is what we need to do for in this case. But let's take an example. If it's been applied to the whole to all the users, then this is not going to work. So let's create a policy for testing, and let's see if we apply to all the users. Then how can we exclude a single user out of that OneDrive retention policy? Okay, I would like to be static. So I'm going to apply this only OneDrive, and this is by default for all users. Okay, let's go to next, and let's leave all the settings by default. Now this is done. So I had created this policy, test OneDrive retention policy. Right now, this policy being applied to all the users in the tenant. Now, if a user has OneDrive already utilized up to 95% time, then how can we exclude that user? So right now you see edit, I do not get an option here, anything, because it's applied to all the users in the account. Now here I get excluded options, and this is not graded out. Grayed out. It's highlighted. So if I have to exclude any user from the tenant, then we have to copy the URL and we have to add it. So let's generate the OneDrive URL, and let's take an example, this user. So we'll create a OneDrive URL. Once we go there, give OneDrive, then click on create file link, and this will auto-generate a OneDrive URL link for the user. Now we can paste this into here to exclude. Once we're done, let's tap on plus symbol. And here there's a trick. Once we do it, just make sure you click on this. If I click done, you will notice it's not there. You see the difference? So we have to make sure once we click edit, paste the URL, and when we click plus symbol, we have to make a check mark beside it. Only then it's going to be excluded and it will be added. Else, it will not be there no matter you try multiple times. So this way, I have excluded one of the user from the tenant, and this is the same we can do for our test case where user OneDrive shows in desktop once we sync 200 gigabyte, but in SharePoint Online OneDrive, and we check that is what is OneDrive Online. I mean that is this one, the storage used. So here it shows 950 gigabyte for that user, but when you try to sync the data from OneDrive to the desktop, it shows 200. So rest of the data where it's going, that was getting stored in the preservation hold library and was keep increasing the space of OneDrive. So this is one of the scenario, and other things we can also check, and that is if you go to policies. The other one is data loss prevention. We can also check if there is a data loss prevention policy being created and user is part of that policy. Then we can exclude that particular user. All right. Third is e-discovery. Let's go to e-discovery and let's see if there are a lot of cases I've created, like test one. Okay. If I go here and let's go to hold and check if the user is part of a new hold here. That this is the case that I created, and one mailbox, one site. So let's see if user is here in that. So one site, one user. Let's see the user. It's Tony. It's not that one. That if this is the user has an issue, we can definitely uncheck it. Done. It's done. This is for Exchange mailboxes, but for SharePoint, and let's see the site. If it is the site has an issue, we are unable to delete the folder file content for that site, whether it could be a team site. That, as you see, this is my private team site, or else a communication site. We're going to exclude the same, and then it will allow us to remove the data from that site. This is a third scenario that we can discuss. So even all these, if we had followed their last option, that after 24 hours you tried this and didn't work, that is that URL. We can navigate to this one, aka.ms, and this is Microsoft diagnostic tool which automatically detect for the user if there is any retention policy being applied, and that is what causing the issue in order to delete the files from preservation or keep increasing the OneDrive storage. That is what we will also test here. So it's asking OneDrive URL. So we have to enter, as I mentioned, not the OneDrive URL for user. Let's take an example. I'm logged in with another user by the name of Cami. If I tap on this 8 dot tiles, go to OneDrive. So it's not about this URL. It's a preservation hole library URL. So keep it in mind, because if I type this URL, it's not going to give me anything. So I have to type the user preservation hole URL. So if I type here after this layout 15 preservation hole the library, it will show me. Let me. There must be some typo error. If I go to here, and it should be this one. Okay, so let me check if I'm logged in with the correct user. Let me go to OneDrive once again. Okay, I'm doing already a mistake. It should be placed here after domain.com, not after layout. If I press enter, now I could see the files under preservation hold. So if you see, if I tap on these 3 dots and try to delete, I'm getting this message. The request was cancelled. The event result shouldn't be on hold. If I type anything else, here 2 files, I'm getting this. The library contains items that have been modified, deleted, but must remain available due to e-discovery hold. Items cannot be modified or removed. So it is showing that must be remain available in the e-discovery. So looks like the item is in e-discovery hold, and this is what causing the issue. So now let's run the diagnostic and see if we get what we are looking. So I could type this URL of the preservation OneDrive URL hold for that user. I can paste it and run the test. Now this will do a auto diagnostic test for that user, and it will look into all the places in the Office 365, whether it's DLP, retention policy, e-discovery hold, and if it find anywhere the user is put on hold, then it will show us the result, and also we can remove that hold from here. Once that is done, we have to wait for up to like 24 hours. So as you could see here, it has found. This site has invalid retention policies applied to it. If you would like to remove this site from the below listed invalid policies, we can attempt to do this for you. So 1, 2, 3, it shows. Right, so we have to acknowledge the same. I was deleted and stop retaining it from the site. Okay, and let's do an update. And this again going to execute. And once it is done, it will show us an output success, and that means removal of the initial retention policy at the tenant level has completed. That means it has successfully removed. Don't run it now, because if you run it again, it may give you the same result. So wait for next 24 hours, then you can validate the same from here. If it doesn't show any hold, e-discovery, any kind of hold for that user, that means it's good state, and we can remove the user data from preservation hold. Right now, it's not letting me to do this because it was in hold. So this was all about, and if we follow this, I think we can surely overcome this. We can also mitigate the same from the PowerShell. That is something I will share in another session. But this was from GUI, how to mitigate this issue where there's a big difference between the OneDrive that we try to sync from the online to the desktop and the OneDrive that we see on the OneDrive online. And also we cannot delete or remove user data from the preservation hold. So this is what all about, and I hope it was helpful for everyone, and we can mitigate such issues if we come across in the future. So thank you all for watching it, and have a good day ahead. I mean, bye bye.